think about the criminal division of the FBI, which basically is this part of the Metropolitan Police, combined with the largest media organization in the United States, with vast news outlets, and the White House working together, and with money changing hands and deals being made. That's the breadth and scope of this story.
And by the way, Nick Davies apparently couldn't get any other papers interested in the story. Usually you want your paper to own the story, but he wanted other papers to pursue it too, and no one would bite.
Well, only The Independent, which is an independent daily newspaper in Britain, not by any means as big as any of the Murdoch papers, would write about it. But one of the scariest things in journalism is to be out there on your own on a story, that no one picks it up, that no one advances it. You know, that's the story of Watergate when it started. And so those are the really vulnerable moments when you're there by yourself. And so Alan Rusbridger, the managing editor of The Guardian, also confronted with the police telling him to give up the story. When he's convinced it's a story, picks up the phone and calls the New York Times.
Now let's talk about Rupert Murdoch a little bit. He's a very wealthy and a very powerful man, and in England he's been very connected to the prime ministers ever since Margaret Thatcher, and his papers endorsed her, and I think they had a close relationship. Would that be the right word?
A very friendly, mutually supportive relationship.
Mutually supportive. So in what way did she support him?
Well, they relaxed media ownership rules in Britain so that, for instance, he could expand from his 2 tabloid newspapers to buy the Times on Sunday and the regular Times of London as well, early in her administrations. And, you know, for years, there have been allegations from everyone from Harold Evans, who was the first editor of the Times that Rupert Murdoch fired, to others, that there was some kind of collusion between the Thatcher government and Rupert Murdoch that dated even before her election, during the campaign. And it turned out just the other day that a memo from inside Mrs. Thatcher's office recounting a meeting where Rupert Murdoch came in during the campaign to lay out his business plans for newspapers in Britain was discussed by the 2 of them.
And what about subsequent prime ministers who Murdoch supported? How did they support him?
He switched allegiances from John Major, who succeeded Mrs. Thatcher, to Tony Blair in the early 1990s. After Mr. Blair went to Australia, and some people would say unbended knee, and you can see it in the documentary, to Australia, to a news corporation summer celebration, to pay his homage to Mr. Murdoch. And this was done again, by the way, by David Cameron. He went to Rupert's yacht prior to his election. So he became, in many ways, the kingmaker in Britain. An American citizen of Australian birth becomes the kingmaker in the home of the Commonwealth.
So what about the Rupert Murdoch media operations in the United States? And the operations he owns here include the Fox News Channel and the Wall Street Journal. Has there been any evidence or any question of whether the media operations here are implicated in any, bribery or hacking?
Not that we came across, no.
Is there any evidence, since you've been working on the subject, that other tabloids in the United States are guilty of the same kind of thing that the Murdoch British tabloids are allegedly guilty of?
First of all, the British tabloids were operating here. They had reporters here, stationed in Los Angeles and Washington, is my understanding, the 2 main places. And they did, as part of their operations in Britain to supply their publications in Britain, did do things here in the United States, and did retain or work with private investigators to get information about people here in the U.S. They also conducted surveillances here in the United States, for example, on Michael Jackson, in pursuit of celebrity stories. Do we have any evidence that they hacked into phones here in the United States? No, not at this time.
So here's something I'm wondering about. Like, you've been an investigative reporter for so long. You used to work for 60 Minutes as a reporter there, and you were portrayed by Al Pacino in the movie The Insider about corruption within the tobacco industry. So are you like shocked at the allegations of what has happened in the Murdoch media empire, or did you think, oh, now we have some evidence of what people kind of suspected before?
I'll tell you, I'm not shocked that some people were paying off the police. You know, I'm old enough to go back to the era when certain reporters on newspapers thought they were police. I mean, they were literally, the police reporters. Some of them used to carry badges in the old days, and lots of favors changed hands. I'm not shocked that a police department might do X or Y and look the other way. And I'm not necessarily shocked that there's interplay between the center of power, in this case Downing Street or the White House, and reporters. What shocked me was how this was all a very small group of people who were all playing in the same game in London. And the scale of it, the intimacy of it, how close they were, and the fact that Parliament, for instance, really didn't have the power or the will to get to the bottom of it. And that it was, in the end, a Manchester lawyer, a reporter for, relatively speaking, a marginal newspaper, The Guardian. It's tiny by compared to the Murdoch papers. And a few members of Parliament were the bumps in the road that allowed this to come out.